Hello, we've been expecting you. I'd like to welcome you to the Crossroads Inn, except no. I'd like to welcome you to Cory is Wrong About the Prequels, our new Star Wars show where we go in depth about all things Star Wars, starting with episodes 1 and now episode 2. And we do, as we always do, deep dives into media, talking about all the implications with everything that we know. Today we will be discussing episode 2 of Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Today I have Cory joining me, so say hello, Cory.
Hello. Greetings, everyone.
Yes. Before we begin, as always, check out all of our fabulous content from Thoughts from Aunt Wu. Follow us on Twitter. You can see the Twitter up above, as well as my Twitter and Cory's Twitter somewhere. You can check out our Avatar podcast if you're into Avatar The Last Airbender. That's really, if you're into Avatar The Last Airbender, it's a really good show, and you can really see some deep dives and all the implications of different things that come about with Avatar. So that's something to check out, as well as all the other content. If you're into the CW, check out Felicity and Friends, our text-based chat on the entire Arrowverse, where we talk about different things that come about, similar to this, but in text form. So, without further ado, let's get into Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, the second of the Star Wars prequels. Cory, why don't you start us off with your initial thoughts?
Well, this is the lowest it gets. This is where the bar is set the lowest for the prequels, and I think this movie was the nail in the coffin for everyone hating on the prequels. And I think this movie was so bad, it made people think worse of Phantom Menace, and even worse of the next movie, which is like Revenge of the Sith. So I think it drags the entire prequels down, and I think this is the flag bearer when people think of how bad the prequels are. So it's unfortunate to me because in terms of lore building and world building, this movie is pretty essential, especially if you watch the extended universe stuff like the Clone Wars and just like all of the other stuff. Like, all of it is established, really, in this movie. Like, everyone says Phantom Menace is a movie where you can just remove it completely and nothing really changes. Well, this movie you can't remove. This is a very pivotal movie, and everything in this movie is needed. And, again, it's a shame. I made the comparison last week about, like, Phantom Menace being a movie where you crawl through shit to pick out some diamonds. Well, this movie is, like, kind of like that, too. Like, rewatching it, as a kid, I despise this movie. Like, I zoned out completely. There was so many stretches of the movie that went on too long. And it's like, it's funny. I remember this movie very well. It's just, like, there were so many parts of it my brain just glazed over. Like, the super long chase scene on Coruscant with the assassin, and then the stupid gladiator fight. Like, there's just so many scenes, like, that are, like, I remember, but I was just bored during them. And now, like, rewatching Attack of the Clones with the lens of the other extended universe, like, again, Clone Wars, I did catch the good stuff that I missed before. And I think a lot of people gloss over because everyone that talks about the prequels just has a blanket statement. The prequels are bad. The prequels ruined Star Wars. That's it. And that's all people say. And, like, I challenge you to say that, like, try to take that lens off and look at the good. And I think Attack of the Clones by far and away is the worst movie critically, and there's just so many problems, but there are good things in the movie. And I think during this review, Mark and I can talk here for 2 hours about how bad this movie is and plot, all the writing and the plot holes and all that. But I think it'll be quicker for me just to talk about what I liked about the movie. So I will be complimenting this movie a lot, only because I want to express what I did like about the movie, but that does not mean I think this movie is good. So, yeah, this movie is not good, but I will be talking about the positive.
Well, you said you challenged someone to, take off that lens and sort of go through it. Challenge accepted. This movie is an absolute abject failure in everything that it does. And this is the first time that I will genuinely say, when people talk about the prequels ruining Star Wars, I don't necessarily believe that's true. The original trilogy is still really, really good, and there's nothing that these movies can do to take away from that. However, this movie messes Star Wars lore in a way that is absolutely unacceptable. And Phantom Menace is not a particularly well-made movie. I did not give it a particularly good rating. But Cory isn't wrong that there are some positives in there. There are some very good scenes, some very good cinematography, some really good effects, and it works. But for me, if you look at Phantom Menace, it is an execution problem. The basic sort of outline of the movie, if you think it structurally, Phantom Menace is, okay, it's the story of how Anakin was taken from Tatooine from slavery and brought to the Jedi Council, to the Jedi, and it's the story of this trade federation thing on Naboo. Now, I think that execution-wise, there are a lot of problems. There were a lot of missteps in how they executed that. But the overall structure of the story is fine. I don't necessarily think that if you just pitched me, like, the movie is going to be about finding Anakin, and there's going to be this overall kind of plot about, the rise of Palpatine becoming Chancellor, and how that was affected with Naboo and the Trade Federation. I would say, okay, sure, I can live with that. Go ahead. This movie, no. The structure of the movie is a mess. It doesn't make any sense. Actions do not flow within each other. The stories don't really work. I don't even fully understand what the outline of this story was. And I talked a ton last week, like, how did these things make it into a big budget movie? How did someone not catch all of the crap that was in it? But, like, then we get into this one, and it's like, I yearn for last week. I yearn for Phantom Menace, where it's like, yeah, Jar Jar was really stupid, and that was annoying. And yeah, there were a lot of annoying poop jokes, but at least, like, the movie kind of had a semblance of order, and the plot kind of made sense. This plot is just all over the place, and I don't understand how anyone screened this and didn't go, hey, George, what is this movie? I don't understand a word of it. So we'll get into things, and I don't really know how we're going to structure this. I mean, I don't want to just turn this into me complaining for hours, because, most people can kind of agree, like, there are serious problems with this movie. But there are things specifically that I want to talk about, and there are going to be some that are just like me looking at plot holes and being like, why did this happen? And then there'll be sort of the more serious conversations about, like, the macro world of Star Wars. The other thing I want to say is, looking at Clone Wars, which is something Cory and I kind of do a lot, looking forward to Clone Wars. And for the record, I have not finished it, but I will by next week when we talk about it. It's sort of the lens of, like, for me, Clone Wars is the, like, what if the prequels were good? Like, it's these characters, but in a, like, well-done story. And while for Cory, that lens makes you feel more like, oh, well, maybe there's some positive because it set up stuff in Clone Wars. For me, it's the opposite. For me, Clone Wars has gone, oh, no, it's not that this was an impossible story to tell. There are ways to make this good. They just couldn't do it. So let's get into things. We open up with sort of a, this whole thing with Padme about whether or not she's blown up or not. Not entirely sure. This scene kind of doesn't make any sense because, like, I don't know why the ship wasn't blown up in space, but, like, whatever. So one thing I want to talk about on a serious note, though, is the first scene with Palpatine and the Jedi. And Palpatine sort of asks Yoda, like, do you think war is going to happen? And Yoda's response is exclusively based on prophecy. Like, he's like, we can't see the future because, things are clouded. And even though obviously we know that Palpatine being the Sith, there's this, there's these overtones of that. But did it not feel a little bit weird that it was like, it felt to me like Palpatine was asking him, like, based on world events, based on the world, like, as almost an intelligence officer, what is your gut feeling? How do you feel about what's coming next? And Yoda answers exclusively from this, like, well, I can't see the future, therefore I don't know. And I feel like that hints at a lot of the problems of the Jedi, where they're like, rather than being concerned with the way, like, the worldly events and the basics of what was coming next, instead, they're, like, exclusively focused on their own religion. And I think that is kind of a problem.
Well, I think it's kind of the opposite. I actually like the way Palpatine is, phrasing the question, B, playing them. Because as you know, and this is actually accepted as fact now, Coruscant had a Sith temple, which, Palpatine used as his base of operations, and it clouds the Jedi's mind. So the entire Jedi Council, A, couldn't sense Palpatine sitting directly in front of him being a Sith Lord, and B, just lost their intuition of looking into the future and looking through the Force. Because the Jedi do get just general visions all the time. It's just the way they are. Even in the original trilogy, that's how it was. So, in this sense, I view it more as almost like, funny enough, like, if we're talking about Avatar The Last Airbender, like Aunt Wu. Like, Aunt Wu is obviously a con artist, but, like, the people still at the village look to her for forecasts in the future. But in the Star Wars universe, there's actually merit to it with the Jedi, because the Jedi actually could sense things in the future through the Force. So Palpatine doing this, I think, was a test to make sure that he's successfully clouding all of the Jedi's premonitions and forecasting. And B, I think it's just a way for us as the viewer to know that the Jedi are not at 100% right now.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying, though, is I feel like there is a very obvious, like, to me, it feels like a problem the Jedi have is that they don't, is that they're so consumed with the Force that they're not even paying attention to, like, very obvious things in front of them. And that's, I'm kind of saying, like, I feel like that's the issue there. Like, I wish that, or I feel like that's actually an intentional thing. Like, if the Jedi were paying a little bit more attention to, like, the world or the galaxy as opposed to, like, the Force, things would have turned out better.
But I don't see how that would be the case, because, like, right now at the movie, in the beginning of the movie, all we know is that separatist worlds are starting to pull away from the Republic. And the reason Padme came is to vote on something that would grant an army to assist the Jedi on all these uprisings and all this stuff. But what we do know is these uprisings are in fact manufactured. Like, the separatists really don't exist. Like, maybe some of the people, a lot of the people in the separatists believe that they have a right to exist. But Dooku, the leader, is just manufacturing this conflict in order to make more conflict, so the clones are created. So the Jedi, whether they were paying attention or not, this is a manufactured cause that they couldn't affect one way or another because of two people.
But my point is that you have a group of systems joining the separatists and joining this cause that's anti-Republic in some way. Obviously, that's going to lead to civil war if negotiations are going to break down. Like, that's a pretty simple, like, thing to look at. And Yoda's answer has nothing to do with, like, well, you know, I don't know enough about the separatists to know anything. It's purely, I can't see the future, therefore I don't know what's going to happen. As opposed to, like, have the Jedi even paid in any attention to what the separatists are actually saying?
Yeah. I also believe that the Jedi don't, you're right, don't do enough, like the Jedi are mediators. I feel like the Jedi should have been at the front lines of, like, going to these disgruntled separatist worlds and trying to convince them either not to leave or to renegotiate. But I've never gotten the hint that the Jedi ever tried to negotiate with the leaders of the separatist worlds. And instead, they're quelling literal, physical, violent conflicts. Like, they're doing the opposite. They're not peacekeepers.
And, like, we know from the last movie, at least, that, like, they were once negotiators set in to negotiate. And, like, where's that part of it? Like, that just seemed really bizarre to me. And and this is not even a negative. This is just, like, it does feel to me like, yeah, the Jedi were, like, actually just effing this one up. So one serious problem I have with this movie, and we'll have a larger discussion of, like, Dooku as a character in a bit, but I wanted to just talk about, like, the introduction of Dooku. And I think that this is, to some degree, like, such a major failure, because you get this first, like, like first mention of Dooku by Padme, and it's this problem I think this movie has a lot, where it seems like they assume you have a lot, as a viewer, have a lot more information than you actually do, because she says this name and everyone just kind of knows who he is. Everyone just kind of like, you know, knows what's going on. And yeah, there's this one line about, oh, he used to be a Jedi, but like, I feel like we should have known who Dooku was. I feel like we needed way more information about that, and instead, it's just kind of like hanging there. And
this is I mentioned it. I began to mention it last week. This is like a prime example of the biggest failure right now. Like, it would have been phenomenal if in the Phantom Menace, Dooku was a Jedi Master, and you witnessed Dooku becoming disgruntled with the Jedi Order, and witnessed him leaving at the end of Phantom Menace, and then everything here makes sense. You wrote away the problem. Dooku was introduced, and I'd even say that even made Maul's death more justified, because at least you're walking into a new antagonist in the second movie. But you're right. They introduced Dooku by one or two throwaway lines that he was a former Jedi. You don't even know he's a Jedi Master. You just know he was a former Jedi. You don't know that he used to train Qui-Gon, which is big information. There's
or Yoda's Padawan, or all these.
Yeah,
I know that you really enjoy Palpatine's rise throughout these movies, and I think that for the most part, it is actually a pretty major positive of the prequels. This is like a good example where like we at least get to see Palpatine like as a regular human being, and then we slowly see, we get to see where, like, oh, he's also the Sith, and it's this whole thing. Like, it's not like they just pretend. Like, imagine if they had done this with the Sith. Like, Palpatine showed up in the middle of Episode 3 and was like, "Oh, I'm the Chancellor now. Everything's." It's like, no, we actually got to see a little bit. And I like why Dooku wasn't a character in Episode 1 is just beyond me. Like, it would have worked. And obviously, there's a lot of things that have to happen in the 10 years between these movies. And I get that. And I'll say this right now. I am totally fine with the fact that there is some... All right, we are going to welcome a guest in. So I'm going to pull him in right now, and then I'll continue this thought. Hello there. Can
Hello.
you hear us? Welcome. So hold on. Let me finish this thought, and then I will introduce our guest. So... I have no problem with the sort of hinting at other stories, and you want this universe to be really big and expansive and feel that. So you just sort of, you hint at these other stories that are going on and these other things. I'm fine with that, but there are times when there's crucial plot information that we need. You can't do that then. You can't just throw it in there and be like, oh, no big deal. Everyone will just kind of pass it off as no big deal. Like, you need to introduce things. So... before that, we have a guest joining us, so let me welcome Dennis. Hopefully you can hear me.
Hello. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Awesome. Love all this Star Wars talk.
Yes, we're doing our Star Wars show. So we're talking about Attack of the Clones. We already gave our initial thoughts. Would you like to give your initial thoughts on Attack of the Clones before we get back in?
I guess I'll just start with, as the prequels as a whole, I would say, like, I'm okay with it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I feel like I like the films a little more individually than when you put them together as an actual prequel for what they did for the rest of the Star Wars universe. Attack of the Clones, I think I like it a little more than most. Like, I would say I liked it overall, like a 3 out of 5, something like that.
Oh,
it's good.
Oh, you sweet summer child. You're not going to be in agreement here.
I found, I think I was comparing it when I was watching a lot to Episode 1, and I really don't like Episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys feel about that?
Well, Mark and I are pretty the opposite. I think Mark and I have like a standing respect for Phantom Menace, even though it has its flaws. But Mark and I were pretty much saying at the beginning, like, this is the irredeemable one that dragged down, I think, all of Star Wars as a whole, including the prequels.
Yeah, I think this is the worst by a margin. I have a lot of problems with this movie. We were just kind of discussing. We were really right at the beginning, so we were just discussing the introduction of Dooku as a character and how I really don't like that they just kind of like throw him in randomly.
Oh yeah, you guys are kind of breaking up on my line.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, we'll kind of just go. We can hear you though, so if you need to, just talk. So we get a little teenage Annie. We can. I don't know. I don't know much to say other than the normal. I don't like how annoying he is.
Well, it's so funny because I see what they're doing. Obviously they're setting the seeds for him being defiant and obviously they're setting the seeds for his Darth Vader turn, but the way they're doing it is just making him an angsty, I don't have to listen to you type thing. And I think that's again, just the wrong direction to take with Anakin Skywalker. I think the one scene in this movie that really set the seeds for Vader well was him slaughtering the Sand People. And
great scene.
And that's it. Everything else, they're going angsty teenager with Obi-Wan, and then the entire rest of the subplot of this movie is him trying to woo Padme, which is just awful to watch. It's just you're trying everything in your power to set the seeds right now for his turn, and I just don't think it's necessary. I think subtlety would have went a far way in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I agree with you that I understand what they're trying to do, and I understand okay, he's a teenager and he's a Jedi, so obviously he's really poor interpersonal skills, and that's what they're going for. But this is an example where just because I understand the character doesn't mean, or understand what they're doing doesn't mean I'm I want to watch it. I just didn't enjoy seeing I say Aang because we're talking about things I don't like, and now I'm talking about Avatar. I just didn't enjoy seeing it, and I kind of I wish there was a little bit less Annie being just annoying towards Obi-Wan. The times got a little bit repetitive. One thing I want to ask you, and this is I guess just a question for Cory because I don't think you've seen Clone Wars, Dennis. Do you think that this is after Obi-Wan's whatever thing with the Duchess, right?
This is after Sabine?
Yeah, Satine.
Yeah, Sabine happened when Obi-Wan was Anakin's age.
Okay, because it seems pretty obvious that Obi-Wan's kind of okay with the idea of him flirting and clearly knows he's got a thing for her, but obviously nothing can happen.
Obi-Wan was a teenager when he had that fling, so it was even before Phantom Menace.
I want to add about the. So you guys were saying how you didn't really like seeing the angsty Anakin, right?
Right.
Angsty Anakin or the toddler Anakin you guys get in episode 1?
I mean, they're both bad, but there's pros and cons. Here's the thing. Anakin from episode 1 is, okay, it was not a particularly great child actor, which, you know what, it happens. Some child actors are just not ready to carry movies, and that it's not their fault. It just is the way it is. And at least with that one, it's very clear. I think that it's just bad. It's a child actor who just wasn't ready to be in this role. With this one, I don't think it's entirely Hayden Christensen. I think that it's also the writing. It's a little bit of both. Because this movie has really good actors in it, and granted, so does Phantom Menace. And there's a lot of bad performances by really, really good actors. And I think that that's kind of the difference where I think this is not entirely a performance thing. I think it's both writing and performance. Where I think that in episode 1, it's more of a performance problem.
I was saying maybe I like Attack of the Clones a little more than episode 1. Is that I kind of saw the path that I wanted to see with Anakin and Obi-Wan. They're creating some sort of dynamic between the two that we didn't see in episode 1. One was about trade tax. Episode 1 was all over the place for me, and I did not like it almost at all.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you that again, as I said earlier, that you're right. They're setting the seeds, but I think they're smacking us over the face with it because every bit of dialogue out of Anakin's mouth in Attack of the Clones is either him fighting with Obi-Wan or a cheesy line to Padme, and there's no breathing room. It's just after, and they're not being. I think subtlety is just something that's missing from this movie. Where I think they just, and also this movie has no real protagonist that you like. You don't like Anakin. Obi-Wan is Obi-Wan. Of course, everyone likes Obi-Wan, but I think this movie
I
needs
don't
a
think
strong.
Obi-Wan was likable in this movie.
Well,
I think
why?
Obi-Wan is really good. I think Obi-Wan's really good is a bright spot of Phantom Menace, and I think I like Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. I think this is a weird one for Obi-Wan. There are moments when I don't entirely understand him.
Well, like the one scene I agree with you is we might as well just jump right ahead to the whole assassination scene, which went on way too long for me. But like, I love it how he opens up the scene when the droid comes in by jumping out the window recklessly, grabbing it, and then going through a whole 25-minute reckless like chase scene. And then they make it to the bar, and he says to Anakin, "Patience, like slow down, use the Force, like blah blah blah." And he just jumped out the window to grab onto a droid floating in like a city, like.
Yeah, no,
like
that's what it was, where it felt like suddenly, like, at the beginning of that, he's the reckless one, and then he's scolding Anakin for being reckless, and it's like, well, you just jumped out a window, like, what are you doing? Also, one little bit, like, they leave her alone. They just are like, oh, well, this is the only danger. Which, you know, works out, because apparently Jango is like, it's more important for me to kill this other bounty hunter than to go kill Padme.
And it's also crazy to me.
And Django's hiring another bounty hunter to do the job he was hired to do.
And her entire bedroom is glass. Like, can't you just snipe her in bed?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the argument they would make is that, like, all of this was done on purpose because it's all Darth Sidious. But I hate that argument of, like, if he has that much control, like, then what's the point? Like, why are we even here?
I totally agree. It's just like so much for like such a little cause in a way.
Mm-hmm. Another thing about that chase scene, was the sound effects as annoying to you as it was to me?
No, you know what? I'm gonna give compliment again, as I said earlier. I'm gonna give compliments where compliments are due. I think not only the chase scene, but the bar scene, the entire 25 minutes that this went on, I like what they did. This is Coruscant. I think they did a phenomenal job with just Coruscant, with cars flying and like the background. Like there's no wasted frame.
But there was that weird like alarm thing going off every like 20 seconds.
They're in a city.
I don't know. It just hurt my ears.
I think everything about it made Coruscant look awesome. I love the bar.
Well, yeah, I would agree that Coruscant looked awesome. Yes.
And like, it just for me, it went on just way too long. That entire chase could have been 5 minutes, and it would have told the exact same story. But like again, my eyes were glazing over. Like as a kid, as a kid is when I should appreciate it the most, honestly. And as a kid, I was bored, and I know a lot of people. This is the issue with pure CGI, where it feels sterile. And like later on in the movie, we'll talk about another scene with like Padme going through all the tech and all that stuff, and almost getting crushed. It's just like it looks so fake, and the actors can't really do anything about it
because they're nothing to interact with. They're
in this giant green room, and it's like they're shooting a cutscene to a video game and not a movie. And like
don't defame video game cutscenes. There are some amazingly shot video game cutscenes.
Yeah, but at least in video games,
anything done by Blizzard, any of the there's some great Star Wars cutscenes. What are we talking about?
Of course. But my point is like you're putting in the early 2000s live action people into an entire room of green screens with suits of green and asking them to act, and then you're giving them bad source material. It just everything like collapses. Like it's awful.
Mm-hmm. Mark, did you just break news that Blizzard is making episode 10?
No, they're not. Blizzard
I'd be
is
on
not
board
owned by Disney. I will say this: I'd be totally on board with Blizzard just making all the movies, but apparently that's not allowed. So another sort of so macro point I want to talk about here is we have the council sort of this whole thing with like Obi-Wan is like I don't think Anakin is ready, and then the council says that he is. I find it really weird that like this thing here, because it feels to me like we start with episode 1 where the council's like, nope, we're not training Anakin, he's too old, yada yada yada, and Obi-Wan sticks his neck out for him, after Qui-Gon dies and says, I'm going to train him. And then next time in episode 3 we see the council doing things, and it seems like Obi-Wan is the one who's like, I kind of believe, I believe in him, and isn't he the chosen one, and yada yada yada. And then in this movie, though, the council is like, oh, Anakin's fine, he can go off on his own, and Obi-Wan's like, no, I don't think he's ready for this. I feel like it's weird, like they're not fully sure who's supposed to trust Anakin and who doesn't.
Well, I mean, I think it's a matter of Anakin's been training nonstop for 10 years, so I think this is, and then you also see this is a matter of Obi-Wan right now knows Anakin the best. Anakin knows how emotional and how obsessed he is with Padme, while the Council doesn't. So I kind of see it, I guess.
It to me, it feels like, in this movie, it really does feel like Obi-Wan is the one holding Anakin back. And then in the next movie, it really feels like the Council is holding him back against the wishes of Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And I'm just not... And again, yes, we do get to see stuff in Clone Wars that kind of fills in the gaps a little bit, but I don't think we get enough of it to really understand that.
Yeah. It's just like that's like some of the little, like, again, like the little things, like, it's just like, yeah. It
goes back to what I continue to say from last week. It feels like a first draft. Like, this to me feels like that. Your first draft, you have problems like this, and then someone makes that and goes, "Wait a minute, these don't go together," and they go, "Oh yeah, okay, let's fix that."
And again, it's funny because when we see how good, as Mark and I say, how good the prequels are when they have the overall picture. So everyone that saw episodes 1 through 3 knew what the overarching thing is, and they were able to work with it. But I just think George Lucas, at this point, doesn't know what he wanted. Because if he did know what he wanted, I actually bet you $1 million Dooku would have been in Phantom Menace, and there would be a lot of things that are in this movie that wasn't in the other movie, and then even in 3. So I think George is just writing as he goes.
Oh, he definitely was. I think. I mean, I know that there's some people who believe that like the reason Dooku is so thrown together is because like either Jar Jar or there was supposed to be another enemy reveal. And
I've heard that. I've heard
yeah. I don't know about that, because it's not like he then wrote Jar Jar out of the movie, because Jar Jar plays a big role that we'll talk about in a minute. But like,
well, I think and like let me just go on.
We'll get to Jar Jar in a minute if that's where you're going. Because there's one line I want to talk about that I think it just made me laugh. We have Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Mace talking, and Yoda's like, the new a young Jedi, they're like all too sure of themselves, and I'm like, all we've seen from these movies is Jedi being arrogant beyond imagining, like on a level that's almost silly. So like, shut up, Yoda. Like they're clearly too arrogant. What are you talking about?
Yep.
All right, now to get to Jar Jar. Padme, I have no respect for you now. You made the decision to leave Jar Jar Binks in your Senate seat. You're officially a moron. I have no respect for you. Now I understand why you fell for Anakin, because you're just actually so unintelligent that I guess Anakin's charm worked on you.
Well, what are your thoughts on Anakin using the Force to manipulate her into falling in love? Because I actually see it, especially rewatching the movie now. Like in the first line to her that she said to him was, "Oh, I'll always view you as the boy from Tatooine." And then Anakin was complaining the entire beginning of the movie. She never thinks about me over the last 10 years, where I thought about her every day. And like I swear, you see her slowly, against all logic, falling in love with him, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe it's not a completely unreasonable thing to think, but maybe the argument is that maybe this is it. Maybe her leaving Jar Jar in charge was them signaling to us that she's weak-minded.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the stupidest decision in the world, and like again, it's funny because it makes no sense in any form of Star Wars lore, because no matter what, whether it's Clone Wars or the prequels, Jar Jar has never not been an idiot.
Yeah.
Even when you see him at his most competent, and when Jar Jar's at his best, when I truly see what the writers wanted, I see like an innocent, meaned child who like means the best all the time and has a good heart, but is clumsy and an idiot. But like even at his best, he's clumsy and an idiot. So why would you do it? This makes no sense.
Oh no, it's incredibly stupid. And like, fine, I can accept that like the Gungans wanted one of their own to be a representative in government, and I don't know enough about how the Senate actually functions, but I assume he's part of like the not Senate, like whatever the Congress or whatever the next lower thing down. But like, fine, whatever, the Gungans can have their rep, but it's like, how is Padme not like, no, this is not a good idea? And it's not like Jar Jar being in the Senate doesn't have any consequences.
And this is shit like that too, like how like the Gungans need representation. Like this is why a galactic republic doesn't work. I'm sorry, I'm a fascist in the Star Wars universe. Like
hence your picture on this podcast.
Yes, like you need authoritarian rule because you can't, with certain species, you can't give them equal representation. Like the Gungan, look at like and like it's so funny like how like in Star Wars, like again I everyone knows I read the books and I'm reading like Bloodlines right now, and the New Republic, the one that Leia's leading right now after 6, is falling apart. Like the Republic never works, like in Star Wars, and it's like just so funny to me, like how like.
So speaking of Anakin using the Force to make Padme fall in love with him, there's a little bit in this movie that is Anakin. There's some sexual harassment going on. Like there could be a claim. So my question is, what do you think the Empire's sexual harassment policy was, or do you think he didn't have one?
The Empire or the Republic?
The Empire. Now, once Vader, has some power, what do you think the sexual harassment policy is?
I'm not sure if it applies to any of the Empire's officers, or
if Krennic was, harassing some woman, could you go to his superiors? Do you think that would be?
Well, yeah. Well, what do you think? Well, I think Krennic only had like 3 superiors, and all of them don't give a shit. So
I'm making a joke.
Harvey Weinstein scenario going on in the Empire.
Yes, that's what I'm that's the joke I'm making. All right, getting back on track. So they go once Obi-Wan finds out about Kamino, he goes into the library. I always hated that librarian. I've always hated the way she like is super pompous and is like, "Oh, if there's nothing in our records, it doesn't exist." And I'm like, I feel like
have you seen her yet in Clone Wars?
Yes, I've seen her in Clone Wars.
Yeah, she's obnoxious there too.
I don't know why she needs to be that obnoxious. I just feel like she's a librarian. Like
the kid, I hate the kids that are training. The kids are like the ones that come up with the solution. Like, screw off. Like,
I mean, it's obvious Yoda also knows the answer and he's trying to use this as a training exercise, which is fine. But it's like the fact that the kid can say that, like, why is this librarian so... I don't know. She just comes off as so pompous to me.
To be fair, that's what most librarians are, even in real life.
Although when you got into that scene, is that there is a Padawan down there? Was that Ahsoka?
No, because if you watch the prequel movie, which was like the first ever Clone Wars thing, which I, by the way, never watch it. It's terrible.
I've heard it's awful.
You'd realize that Ahsoka started training at the ripe age of 14, so she was not that young.
Okay, I have not watched that. I just was curious. I really found it hilarious that the Queen of Naboo has a term limit. I don't know why they felt the need to call her a queen when she's not on any level.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on to probably the biggest problem with this movie, other than everything else. The whole Obi-Wan gets to Kamino and has this
whoa! I think Kamino is a bright spot on this movie. By the way,
I'm not. Let me talk about my problem. I'm not. Kamino's fine, but we have this this massive bit of information going on about what's happening here with who ordered the creation of this army and all that. First of all, when I was a kid and I saw this, I thought that Jedi Master Sifo Dyas was Qui-Gon. I thought that was like his name somehow, and I just missed it. And that's what they were saying, and like the whole, he died 10 years ago. I'm like, Qui-Gon died 10 years ago. It must be him. And obviously now I know that that's not true. And I know there is stuff in the extended universe that explains this and makes it make some degree of sense. In these movies, and in this movie specifically, it makes zero sense as to what is going on with this clone army. And it's really bothersome to me that if they wanted it to make no sense, that's fine. Then don't give us any information. Don't try because I for so long thought I was just missing something. Like there was something in Phantom Menace that I had missed that explained who this Jedi was, how they died, what's going on here. And then instead it's like, well, Obi-Wan seems to know who this person is and the council knows who they are, but we have no idea and what's going on. And as I said earlier, like you can't do that to your audience and like say, oh, well, you have to go do your homework. Go read the extended universe and this will all make sense. That's not acceptable.
Well, it's 100% true, and this is literally the Dooku problem. I'm going to call everything that happens in the prequels like this the Dooku problem. Like, Sifo Dyas should have existed in Phantom Menace and been a full-fledged character, and you should have seen... Like, it's so funny. If you think of all the crap they could have cut from Phantom Menace, a.k.a. all of Jar Jar scenes, and you could have replaced it with an arc of Count Dooku and Sifo Dyas, you fixed 70% of the problems with the prequel movies right up front. But they didn't, so
it's not going crazy. So, not 70, but you do fix a lot of problems.
Instead of making Sifo Dyas this random person that the audience hasn't met, and you only explain via dialogue and no visuals, because like at least do flashback visuals, which you don't do, or even show you what the guy's face looks like, which they don't do. You're right. Just make it Qui-Gon. If you replace that writing and that name, Qui-Gon did X, Qui-Gon done Y, at least your brain can be like, okay, Qui-Gon must have done this off screen in Phantom Menace or around that time before he died, whatever. And then that solves it. But instead, you're sitting there like, did I miss something? And you're right. As I never knew Sifo Dyas, period, even up until an adult age, until I started reading the books. And in the books, I read the name and I'm like, I kind of recognize that, and I do a quick Wikipedia search, and I find it. I'm like, oh, that's him. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense now. But, like, those are your two options. Option A, which I think is the best option, put these characters in your first freaking movie. Or option B, rewrite those characters with people that you already know, a.k.a. Qui-Gon, or at least, like, another Jedi that we know. Like, it's
or
ridiculous.
If you really want it to be this big mystery, then... at least put it in later on, either later in this movie or in the next movie. Like, put it in later where it's like we actually get to see all this. But, like, this Jedi is mentioned, like, what? I think he has, like, 4 mentions in this movie, and then that's it. Never again. And, like, this Jedi clearly did a whole massive thing. And then you talk about, like, throwaway lines. I know it's skipping ahead, but, like, when they meet Jango, like, he says, I was contacted by someone named Tyrannus. And... yeah, we later in the movie do technically hear Dooku called Lord Tyrannus, but like it's such a throwaway line that like you have no idea if you're not like paying the closest attention, you have no idea what these people are talking about.
Well, because there's an issue right there. Like the Tyrannus, I don't necessarily agree with you on because there's no way around it. Because if Jango said Dooku, that's it. There's no like you can't know that Tyrannus and Dooku are the same person. You can't know that. You're not supposed to know that. So, like, that's fine, and at least I do appreciate them coming back to it later on in the movie, because the prequels...
my point is, if it was all Dooku, if you just kept with Tyrannus, that's fine, because then it's the name is on our mind and we've thought about it, and then you hear it, you're like, oh, it was all Dooku. But it's the fact that there are multiple names we've never heard before in this whole Camino plot. You then forget. You just don't even remember because I didn't even remember that, like, and I've seen this movie a couple of times, unfortunately. I didn't even remember that Jango utters that line specifically. And then he said it, and then I obviously knew that Dooku was Tyrannus, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. But, like, it's such a throwaway line that it's problematic. Like, you can't, again, this is where it comes, like, you can't have multiple characters' names that we've never heard of in the same scene because you're not going to remember them in a cohesive manner.
Yep, 100%. And at this point of the movie, too, you don't even see Dooku. So you can't even put a visual face to Count Dooku because you never ever see Count Dooku. So you can't, like, forget about, you're right, Tyrannus being Dooku. You don't, as a viewer, you probably at this point forgot of Count Dooku. You don't even remember, like, Count Dooku until you actually see him because you can't. This is not a book. This is a movie. Like, you need visuals for things. Like, it's just like, and especially like in a movie so like you're adding, like, this is a compliment I have for the prequels that you add so much world building and lore and stuff. But against it, they don't show it. They just say it. Like,
now as for Camino itself, visually, I'll give them this. Camino looks very cool. It's a type of planet we've never seen. Go ahead.
I want to add on to that quickly, and then I'll let you go on everything. But, like, this movie, and I will say this is the best movie that shows it. This here shows the diversity of Star Wars planet. You had Coruscant. You had Camino. You have Anakin on Naboo. You have Tatooine. You have Geonosis. This is probably one of the best sci-fi movies for planet variety I've ever seen in the sci-fi. And, like, do I have some complaints that some of it looks too fake in CGI? Sure. But this is the early 2000s. I think they're using the best of that technology. And I would say the diversity of planets is a big thumbs up for me.
I think Camino looks very good. I think Geonosis looks a lot more annoying. I think that is a little bit worse for me. But I think Camino looks good. I think that they capture an aesthetic, and it does look a little fake, but it almost looks fake in a good way because you're on this planet that's, like, you know, cloning and clearly, like, super technologically advanced. Like, I
love too how sterile it is on the inside.
Yeah, I'm more okay with Camino. Granted, I do think it's a little bit crazy that they built, you know, this stuff on this, like, you know, planet with constant rain and water. It does kind of feel like this is a stupid decision, but, you know, whatever. Can't stop people from building on the coast.
Can I add in a fun fact?
Sure, add in a fun fact.
Guess who was born and raised on Camino?
Who?
Darth Plagueis.
I did not know that.
Very interesting fun fact.
Interesting. One little thing I have to say, I would be remiss if I don't mention probably the worst line in the history of movies. The little sand conversation between Anakin and Padme, and God, that is cringy on a new level, guys.
Is it? Yes, but did it revolutionize the meme game? Yes.
Sure, it was a fantastic meme, but it's not the best prequel meme, so no.
Well, all the best prequel memes come in the next movie, but
yeah,
sure.
The best prequel meme is have you heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? That's the greatest meme.
It's everywhere, man.
Yes. So you guys, I mean, obviously I don't have any women here, but, like, that's how you'd want to be hit on, right? Like, this guy musing about how sand is rough and gets everywhere while running his hand down your back.
That, and then knowing that he's gonna have one hand later.
True. Well, she doesn't know that yet, but yeah.
If she has an intuition.
Oh, I want to add on one more thing because I'm looking at my own notes.
Yeah.
Another compliment. Again, I'm going to try to compliment this movie as much as I can. I love some of the new technology. I love the hyperspace ring around
We're not there
Obi-Wan's ship. What?
We're not even remotely there yet.
Yeah, we are.
No, we're not. I'm still...
Obi-Wan uses the hyperspace ring to get the Camino.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I thought we don't see it until... Yeah, you're right. Fine. Cool. Fine.
I mean, like, I didn't think this was a perfect movie, obviously. Like, I thought it was okay. But I just thought it was a step and then attack instead of episode 1. Mm-hmm. Like, this is where I wanted to see things go. We got a little more progression in the characters.
That's true. We did. So, question I have for you guys. Do you think that making the clones after a character from the original trilogy was a good decision?
Mark?
Can you not hear me?
No, you cut out a lot.
Oh. Do you think that making the clones all cloned from the father of a character from the original trilogy was a good decision?
You cut out again. You said original trilogy.
I don't know what's happening. My mic is...
Like I heard like the first
All right.
half of your sentence.
Do you think that it's a serious problem that they made Jango Fett as the clone guy?
No,
Because I hate it.
I don't see how you could have. Who could it have been? Like
Someone we've never heard before.
Why?
Because it's so... First of all, on a sort of more macro level, I'm not actually a Boba Fett fan. I've never fully understood the love of Boba Fett. He doesn't actually do anything in the original trilogy. But fine, people love Boba Fett. But like, to me, it's not like Boba Fett was this character that makes any sense for him to think back and be like, yeah, that he really probably was the son or clone of the guy who all the clones were made of. Like, to me, it feels like this completely meaningless, oh, they wanted everyone to cheer and go, oh my god, it's Boba Fett's father, and oh my god, it's Boba Fett. Like, who cares? Like, to me, it's just so... I really don't like
all
it.
fanfare.
The thing is, it's fan service, but it's fan service with there's no point to it. It doesn't increase our understanding of the character of Boba Fett. It doesn't do anything that, like, is revolutionary. It's just this meaningless fact that makes everyone feel good, and that's the type of fan service I can't stand.
Sure, but now I will say this: I can't imagine the clones not being him, especially again because of Clone Wars and how and funny enough, Battlefront, like the original Battlefront games, like the clones own it, and now like I think they're in a perfect place.
But the clones own it, fine. But if the clones were somebody else, would it be different? Would Clone Wars be different if they were just not related to Boba Fett? Everything else about them was exactly the same. They just didn't look like Boba Fett.
You're saying it might as well just be someone we've never met before, some random guy. I think that actually would have done a disservice, because at least now you have fan service. So now, all these people were fans of Boba Fett, we'll make him a clone base. I think that's better than nothing than making him...
I think that if you're going to do it, if you really need this to be tied to something, then make it interesting. Make it inform us about some part of the world or some part of a character that's great. But it's not like at any point during Boba Fett's character in the original trilogy there was ever this like, oh wow, he like acts a certain way and I wonder why that is. Like, it has no bearing on it whatsoever. And it's just, to me, it's just like this useless fact. And and to me, it's emblematic of this idea that's like, we need to throw these things in order to like, oh, it'll just kind of make people happy. And you talk about like wasted effort. Like, to me, this is purely wasted space. Like, it doesn't do anything for the overarching story of Star Wars. It might as well not be true. So what's the point? And I don't like it when we waste moments on something that has no point.
All right, sure. I mean, in one case, I do agree to disagree, because unless you establish a character that it could have made sense, or you know what, I will go halfway with you on this. I will say, I wish they fleshed out Boba's reasoning more as to why he would want to be a clone base and like more of his character, because all he really said
seems like he was paid. That's what it is.
Yeah. And that does fall in line, but whatever.
But then again, if he's being paid all this money, why is he like, taking jobs to eliminate senators? But it also here's the other thing: is Jango Fett a bounty hunter who was paid, or is Jango Fett like a true believer who's following Dooku?
No, he is a mercenary through and through, 100%.
Then to me, this is just it just doesn't. I don't know. I just don't care.
So I just want to get, because this is going to be the most complimenting of the movie I've ever done, and because now we're here pretty much. Like, there's really nothing. Like, we can talk about Naboo. All right, Naboo sucks. Let me compliment one thing about Naboo, because these two stories go hand in hand, by the way, because they're happening at the exact same time. The only compliment I have for Naboo is the music. Again, the prequels continue on with the legacy of Star Wars.
Star Wars movie is great. Star Wars music is always great.
All the love music, phenomenal, thumbs up. All of the scenes on Naboo with the good music, thumbs up. That's it. Everything else about Naboo is terrible.
Natalie Portman's attractive.
And Natalie Portman's attractive, yeah. And she's a cock tease because she wears very scandalous dresses.
Well, what do you expect from a Jew?
Now, let's go on to Kamino.
Oh wait, hold on. Before there's one thing I do want to say about Naboo, and this is a problem I think that Star Wars has, and we've talked about this problem in all other shows as well. How long are they on Naboo?
Nobody knows.
That's a serious problem.
So yeah, everything about Naboo is terrible. The writing is terrible. Everything. But now let's get the Kamino, and it's funny in terms of timing. The time between the battle of Obi-Wan and Boba Fett is the exact, more or less the same, if not longer, than the original opening bounty hunter scene I complained about. Mm-hmm. This one, though, was the complete opposite. This was an absolute blast to watch visually. I loved Obi-Wan versus Boba Fett on Kamino and then their dogfight in space. I think that is some of the best Star Wars... In space, definitely one of the best Star Wars fights I've seen just as a dogfight.
The dogfight was really, really good. I'll agree with that.
And then on the planet, it was just very interesting. I think Jango Fett shows the viewer the potential of what Boba should have been in the original trilogy. You see him with these rockets and going face to head with a Jedi. It was so interesting to watch visually, and just like you were on the edge of your seat the entire time. And then in space, they introduced one of the most... This is actually now one of the most iconic weapons in Star Wars, that exploding sound mine. The one that goes... Yeah. That is one of the best sound effects and visuals in... Forget about Star Wars. Sci-fi. I watch Star Trek, mind you. I know all about sci-fi weapons and all this stuff, and I've watched Battlestar Galactica. I've seen all the sci-fi. That is one of the coolest weapons I have ever seen introduced. So bravo to whoever, whether it was George Lucas, whoever put that in, great. So this entire 25 minutes of movie was so without this 25 minutes, this movie would be a 1 out of 10 for me. But this 25 minutes adds in full points for me, and this is the highest part of the movie, and it's all downhill. Well, not all downhill. There's some strong parts still, but like this by far and away was the pinnacle of the movie for me.
Yeah, I think the dogfight is good. That being said, I've never liked Jango's ship design.
I love the Slave, and let me tell you why. Because it is one of the most... It's like the Millennium Falcon in terms of unique. It is like such a brilliant, unique, odd way for like a ship to like work. I love the idea of it standing up. I've never seen a ship stand up like that before.
I don't like the way it looks standing up. I think it just looks silly.
But I think it looks unique, and I was like you when I was younger, because again I'll repeat this to the moon. I was a huge Star Trek fan, and starships are a lot more sleeker and just like make more sense visually. So as a kid, I hated it. I hated the Millennium Falcon too when I was younger too. But now, like seeing it as a bounty hunter ship, it makes perfect sense to me, and I think it's a phenomenal design, and it is again one of the most iconic ship designs that's not the Millennium Falcon. So bravo on the Slave too. I like the Slave one.
That being said, why did Jango go to Geonosis?
I don't know. Because that's where the Separatist army is.
But like, why did he need to go there?
Reinforcements.
For what?
To warn Count Dooku that there's a Jedi. I don't know.
You can't send a transmission for that?
Well, he's running away from Obi-Wan ever since Geonosis, so... since Kamino, so...
I guess? I don't know. That felt a little, like, odd to me. As to, like, oh, he's just there. So, we're on Tatooine. And Anakin has his little rampage. Why was Anakin's mother kidnapped and subsequently kept alive for a month?
I actually think it was orchestrated by Palpatine.
I guess. But they kept her perfectly in terms of perfectly alive so she could just die in Anakin's arms?
I am 100% sure Palpatine and everything, because I'm 100% sure Palpatine planted the vision in the Force of the mom in danger, thus getting him to go to Tatooine. So I wouldn't be surprised if Palpatine was manipulating them through the Force to keep her alive and then have her die at the exact right time. Because this is why Vader is Vader. This is the scene. This is the point of no return. Because Anakin's fear of losing someone like his mother led to his Episode 3 of Padme. So this is the point of no return for Darth Vader. So I think everything here was manipulated by Palpatine. Nothing here was by chance. Everything here was calculated.
It just feels like if this was going to be calculated, there were ways to do it that were a little bit more reasonable than like the way they did.
Well, you know.
I don't know. Like I agree with your point that
That's the prequels for you.
You know, yeah. I mean, like I agree with your point, but it gets back to what I said earlier. Like if you're just gonna be like everything that happens was orchestrated by Sidious, then great. But then like, what's even like the point? It just becomes like so remarkably simple as to like, wow, Sidious can just like has that much control over the galaxy. Like that's almost like, well, how did he not succeed instantly?
Well, it's true. Everything going on in the all 3 prequel movies is literally Palpatine, because the whole Clone Wars is Palpatine. The whole Separatist is Palpatine. Like everything that you see on screen is because of Palpatine.
But here's the thing: I'm fine with the sort of the broad strokes. Like, yes, I'm fine with Palpatine manipulating the Separatists in order to create these two sides. But it's like when you're getting into this nitty gritty of like these tiny little things, that's where it starts to get a little bit too. Like, if he has that much control, if Palpatine can decide when one woman on one planet that he's not on dies, like, if he's that powerful, then, like, what does he even need Vader for? Then just kill him and move on.
Well, I mean, I think he needs to get rid of the Jedi. That's something that needs to be done. I think he needs to appear to have gotten his power naturally through emergency powers and blah, 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 blah. Because, like, one Sith can't take on the galaxy, pretty much. And what's the point of being an emperor if you don't have people to rule over it?
But 2 can?
Yeah, the rule of 2. That's been around for over 1,000 years.
I mean, I know, but, like, I don't know. It just... It gets into this place where it feels like it's very random. And then if you want it to just be, oh, Palpatine did everything, then, like, great, but... I don't know. I'm not in love with movies where it's like, or stories where it's like the villain was literally controlling everything that happens.
While we're on Tatooine, was it stupid how Anakin ran into Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru?
A little bit.
Do you think that was just fan service?
Yeah. Was it
But also
kind of silly that he didn't just murder Watto as soon as he saw him?
Well, Watto, we had this debate. I don't think Watto was abusive to him.
I don't know, but he does have a lot of hatred for slavery.
Yes, but again, I don't think... I think Watto was just like a regular boss to him. Like, he was fair to him. Like, he wasn't abusive. He wasn't mean to his mom. He was good to his mom. And, like, he was just a space Jew.
No, we get the space Jews later.
Whoa, who are the... Oh, you mean on Geonosis?
Yes, we get the stinking Commerce Guild. Which I might even be willing to call anti-Semitism on that one, but... Alright. So, other things. I feel like Yoda can sense that this is going on, but then it, like, never comes up again.
Yeah.
Is it just the Clone Wars started, so they just forgot? Like Yoda's having this vision of, like, Anakin's in real trouble. I sense death and suffering. There wasn't a quick, hey, Anakin, anything you want to talk about? Like none? Nothing?
Again, the Jedi just become so clouded, and, like, I think they're just, like, so directionless. So,
but there's clouded, and then there's just completely falling down on the job. Like,
yeah.
Did
especially
Yoda
because
not write it in his to-do list?
well, especially because Anakin is like the biggest red flag to the Jedi ever, so they should like have like a microscope on him, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Back to Plus again. I'm trying to compliment as much as I can here. The scene of Anakin hugging Padme before swooping away with the iconic music in the background, and then like you entered in the Duel of Fates, Plus, and then Anakin murdering everyone with the Darth Vader Empire music. Plus, this is a very plus scene. I think him murdering the Sand People is a plus.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
In fact, the entire slit of him saying goodbye to Padme, making it to the Sand People with the music, the visuals, and just this is, I think, Hayden Christensen.
It was fine. It was a little easy for me, but whatever.
But yeah, it's not. I think the last scene I was raving about was perfect to me, but this is, I think, a plus.
He gets back, and was Padme not just a little too okay with this?
Well, to be fair, Sand People are like viewed as savages in the Star Wars universe.
She doesn't know that.
Padme?
Or she does, but like, I don't know. Padme kind of has struck me as like a really good person at times. And then she's just like, hey, you slaughtered a whole bunch of people. NBD.
Like, what are you going to do about it?
What do you mean, what am I going to do?
No, but like if you're her, like Anakin is like, just witness his mom. God only knows what he saw. You know what I mean? Like,
let me ask you something. If your friend came to you and was like, my mom died, so I went down and like to the shelter and killed a bunch of cats, would you just be like, sorry, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Give me a hug. Feel better.
But if someone told me that like these cats like slowly killed my mom over a month and tortured her, maybe it's a little bit more like, oh, okay.
But it's I don't know. I feel like Padme's a little. I mean, maybe if you want to go with the
fine, let's go to human.
manipulating her.
I'll do a human comparison with you. If like you heard that like your friend told me, hey, I just murdered these 4 guys, but these 4 guys tortured my mom or my girlfriend or whatever over the past month and slowly killed her, like it's
but
more
then
of like,
you have to add in, and then I went to those 4 guys' houses and killed all of their families too.
Yeah.
You have to add that part in here.
Yep.
I don't know. What it does for me is it undercuts Padme's character, where I don't know, is she actually this idealist? I mean, we hear her spouting about democracy and fairness and how she wants the galaxy to operate, and we know her Senate, we know some of her Senate voting record and the way she is on these things. And then it's like, but he's hot, so it's okay that he killed a whole bunch of people. Like,
no, it's funny. I would normally pull that card because I watch CW and CW, that's literally how it is.
Or, Brian, I like him. So it's okay that he killed a whole bunch of sentient beings.
In this movie, I view it more as like she like I feel like murdering in Star Wars is not that big of a deal because like just like look at like just like what Jedi are capable of, and like I don't know, maybe that's just an excuse, especially because in the prequels they only killed droids. So maybe you're right.
But especially because in the last movie, a major plot point is how Padme respects the Gungans and is like, I don't think I'm better than you. I'm begging you for your help because we need it. So there's this whole plot about how she looks and values like primitive life forms, the sort of savages, as like important people, someone to ask for help from. And then in this movie, Anakin killed a whole bunch of them. No, it's not like, it's not something to be reviled by. And I feel like it should be. Now, if you want to go with the Padme is being manipulated by Anakin, fine. I guess that's a reasonable thing to say. But we don't know that for a fact. And it's like, I don't know.
I'm going to go with be manipulated by Anakin, and if that's not the case, never was the case, then it's just poor writing.
So I wanna pose think about the future of Star Wars here. Hundreds of years from now, there's this history student, this graduate history student, PhD candidate. He's writing his dissertation on the fall of the Galactic Republic, and he's like, I'm gonna go back and take a look, and I think a really important day to look at is the day the Chancellor got emergency powers. I want to look at that. And he looks at the voting record, and he's like, oh, the senator from Naboo did it. Oh, the Chancellor was from Naboo, and it makes sense. Who was the senator from Naboo at the time? Oh, it was Padme. Okay, so there was this charismatic and this relatively important senator who did this. And then he's like, let me go find the video from that. And he looks at the video, and he's like, that's not Padme. That's a Gungan. Why is a Gungan putting forth the motion to give the Chancellor emergency powers?
Can we confirm that Padme didn't give him direct orders to do it and he just did it on his own volition?
We know that he didn't, because they can't get in contact with Padme, because if they could, that would change a lot, because Padme's out in Tatooine, which is the Outer Rim, and two, there's that scene in the scene you see Jar Jar kind of looking at himself like, maybe I could be that one.
This is
I'm kind of in shock that George Lucas was like, oh, I'm going to make him this funny character, episode 1, then no one thinks he's funny except for some kids. And then he's like, all right, well, no one really liked him. How about I make him a major plot point instead?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean,
to do Darth Jar Jar, fine. Then this is totally acceptable. But in this case, it's really not, especially because if this was supposed to be controversial, I feel like the whole galaxy just turned and looked at Jar Jar and was like, yup, his plan, go with that. I don't know. I'm not buying
It's funny because up to now, Jar Jar only did silly things like stick his tongue into electrical sockets and
Misa.
Step and poop. But now, this is something that you can't just this is the big one.
And I don't know. I just feel like this is maybe a time to introduce Bail Organa a little bit and give him, something.
I would have loved the idea of Bail Organa being the one that gave emergency powers to the Chancellor, because then you could have had a I feel guilty arc, and that's why he's in the Rebel Alliance and such a big part of it, because he wants to make up tones for what he did. Yeah. So if this was if this was Bail Organa and not Jar Jar, thumbs up. But nope. This is just us doing fan theory writing.
Okay, so now I want to talk about Dooku's character. Now, going to say this at the top. Next week, we're going to talk about Clone Wars, and we will talk about Dooku in Clone Wars, and I understand that he is way better and all yada, yada, yada. Yes, great, he is. In this movie, Dooku as a character is just, laughably silly. I feel like he should be twirling his mustache.
Well, at this point of the movie, I disagree with you. At this point of the movie, you just see him getting together the Council of the Separatists.
No, I'm saying after that. I'm saying once we get into the gladiator arena.
All Sith are mustache twirling villains. What are you talking about?
But just kill them. Why is this difficult?
No, there's two really low points. The lowest point of the movie for me is this entire gladiator scene with 1,000 Jedi running in and 1,000 that it is so boring and artificial and
Would you like to know honestly what I was thinking during this?
What?
Those animals died. I wonder what they tasted like. I wonder what grilled green thing. I feel like that might taste good, and that the thing that Anakin rides, that thing probably tasted really good. There's some good.
That entire all that could have been cut. There's so many again, it's another thing of the prequels. You could have cut out so much and added in so much, and had something perfect, but they didn't.
And not only that, it's not one moment where some of the heroes show up at the perfect time to save them. It's not 2 moments. There are 3. Anakin shows up on the planet just in time to also be killed with Obi-Wan at the same time. Then all of the Jedi show up right as Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme are about to die, and then when all the Jedi are about to die, Yoda shows up with the clones. Like, really? It has to be, the timing has to be that perfect?
And what about the famous meme of C-3PO being on a droid body, being like, die, Jedi dogs?
I mean, that was dumb, and obviously there was a whole bunch of Jedi dying, which should have made me, feel bad, but
Well, how do you feel bad when you never meet these characters?
And 3PO and R2 are making jokes, because that's funny.
I also think this movie ruined lightsabers for me. I think Lucas is like, you know what fans like? Lightsabers. Let's put an entire arena of lightsabers and Jedi. Like, I feel like that's why I actually like a lot of Force Awakens, because they use the lightsaber very sparingly. Going back to the roots, obviously. And I feel like I got lightsaber overload in this movie. You got so many lightsabers. You got in the training montage with the little kids of all the little lightsabers, blue and green.
And none of them have cool lightsabers. They're all just standard.
That's kind of an overarching issue with all the prequels. It's just so much of it's a lot of quantity over quality.
Yep, 100%.
These sacred Jedi weapons, and everyone's got them, and they have all these expendable Jedis.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe I forgot about this. I didn't mention this. I have to go back to the
Sure.
towards the beginning because I forgot. Remember when they were flying and Anakin lost his lightsaber, and then Anakin and Obi-Wan scolded him and was like, "This is your life, never lose." But then in the next movie, it happened to Obi-Wan. He dropped his lightsaber, and then the clones gave it back to him. So he's a hypocrite.
Well, Obi-Wan is a massive hypocrite throughout this entire movie, and I like Obi-Wan and I like Ewan McGregor's performance, but yeah, there are times where he scolds Anakin for silly things. The Battle of Geonosis was stupid. The one during Clone Wars was infinitely better. Because there were clear goals and I understood what was going on. This was an unintelligible mess. I don't really understand, and I don't really understand this at all times. Yoda just shows up and was like, "Hey, where did all the ships and stuff come from?" Because obviously they got the clones from Kamino, but Kamino also had ships and weapons and all that. And two, they automatically understood, oh, we're just going to follow the Jedi and they're our commanders, I guess. Whatever. And I also feel like there's so much underestimating during this whole thing where it's obviously there's underestimating of Jedi throughout the entirety of the prequels. And in this one, we have the Jedi underestimating a different Jedi in Dooku. Because Obi-Wan is oh, Anakin and I can handle this. And it's no, you can't even remotely handle this.
Yeah. I mean, I to be fair, I liked the Dooku fight. I actually did.
Well, hold on. Before that, there's another thing I want to talk about that I think is really weird and ridiculous, is you have them going after Dooku and Padme falls, and Obi-Wan's we need to go protect her, and, Obi-Wan's giving him all this, oh, you'll be expelled, you can't let your feelings get in the way, but it's this whole movie has been, Anakin, your entire job is to protect Padme. That's the only, protect her at all costs. And now it's oh, nope, that's no longer important. She's served her usefulness.
And she's on the front line. She's pretty much a general.
Oh yeah, that too. The clone is oh, yes, my lady, I'll do whatever you say.
She's just a senator. That's imagine Mark and I work in the field, Senator Carlucci giving orders to a commander on the battle. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it's very silly. Yeah, I mean the fight is fine. I mean, there's a little bit of Dooku, can you just kill them? Can you stop toying with them? But fine.
I just love his actor so much. And again, I can't talk about this movie in the context of the expanded universe, but I'm going to anyway. I know Dooku at his full extent in Clone Wars, and I love Dooku. I think Dooku is an evil night wizard thing. He's just
so he's an evil Jedi, the night wizard thing. Jedi.
No, but the way I'm trying to say it, he's a noble duelist. He's the best duelist, and he's just I think of him, his performance in Lord of the Rings, and I'm getting a mix. It's just he's a noble.
How old is Dooku?
In Star Wars?
Yeah.
He's in his 50s.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't mean his actor. I mean the character.
he's in his fifth. I'll double check.
So
I could go
Yoda
with-
didn't have an apprentice until he was like what, 600 years old?
You have multiple apprentices. What are you
Wait,
talking
you can
about?
have multiple apprentices?
Yeah, of course you can.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you could only have one.
Oh no, yeah, of course you can have multiple apprentices.
Okay, fine. Never mind.
All right, he was born in 102 BBY, which is before Yavin, and then he died in 19 BB. Oh wow, he's really old. Never mind. Holy crap! Hold on, let me do some math right now. 102. So he died in 3. So he minus 19. He's 83 when he died. So he was 83 in the third movie when he died. So that he must have been
he's like
70, no, like late 70s at this point.
no, early.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, how long was the Clone Wars going on for?
I'd say at least 10 years.
All right, so okay, then he was 73 during this movie.
Also, when Dooku throws down that thing towards Anakin and Obi-Wan, I kind of thought, Obi-Wan, can you move? Can you just like roll over and get out of the way so Yoda doesn't have to save you? Please?
This fight doesn't even hold a candle to the Maul fight in the last movie, but I think this is a very good fight.
It's an okay fight. It's not the Maul fight by any means.
No, but hot diggity damn, I like Count Dooku.
One line from Dooku at the end when he's with Palpatine that I really hated, though, was like, the war has started. Like, I feel like Palpatine already knew that, dude.
Yep.
Like, that sounded a little bit too like, I'm giving you a report. It's like, I feel like he knew that. He was the one orchestrating all this. I'll give Yoda this one thing. His last line with begun the Clone Wars halves. I was like, yay, I can end this movie and start thinking about Clone Wars.
Well, the bright side is, everyone, this is rock bottom, and it's all uphill from here. Everything is uphill from here. Like, and this is gonna, like, nothing is even gonna come close to my feelings about every movie from here is above average. So, like, this is we are gonna have some serious debates, especially during Revenge of the Sith and Rogue
We have
One.
a lot of going up, then going down, then then we'll talk. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. It's been a little while, and I don't want to talk about this movie anymore. All right, so we have a guest today, so let's do a quick primer on our ratings. But before we do that, thank you guys for tuning in. You can follow all of us on Twitter. Our Twitters are below our names. We have a guest, so give Dennis a follow. Of course, you can follow the show on Twitter at AuntWoo_pod. Get updates on all things Thoughts from Aunt Woo. And as always, check out our website. You can find all of our glorious content. There were some Hearthstone cards announced during BlizzCon this weekend. So
one was released already.
And one was released, and I've played with it in both its golden and non-golden form. So we'll be talking about those very soon. I'll talk to Cory about when we're going to record that. Check that out. You can check out our YouTube channel. This will also, unless of course you're watching this on YouTube, in which case you're already on our YouTube channel. But you can check out our YouTube channel. I will link that in the description. And if you follow Twitter, you'll find it from there. So, without further ado, let's get into our ratings. We are rating everything between a 0 and a 10. 0 being the worst thing you've ever seen, 10 being perfection, and we are rating against, in this case, all of movies, not just all of Star Wars. For the record, last time I gave The Phantom Menace a 3.5. Cory, what did you give it?
A 5 on the dot.
5 on the dot. Dennis wasn't here, so he did not give a rating. So, Cory, why don't you start off your final thoughts and your rating on this movie?
As a kid, this movie was awful, terrible, and it's just so weird because usually when there's awful and terrible movies that I zone out, and especially when I was that young, I would forget about it. But I remember a lot of this movie when I was rewatching. By the way, this is the Star Wars movie I've watched the least by far and away. I think this is like the 4th time in history I've ever watched Attack of the Clones from start to finish. So, like, and that's like being like generous, like 3 or 4. So, like, rewatching this now with the scope of knowing like Clone Wars and like even the Revenge of the Sith and like the way the prequels ends up and finishes up, I view it a lot more light now. there are two scenes. There's one scene in this movie I think is phenomenal, and that's the entire stuff with Django and Obi-Wan. So that stuff was really good and brings the movie away from horrendous stuff. I like Count Dooku as a whole. I thought Dooku, before I knew how good he was in Clone Wars, could have just been done better by Darth Maul, but now I know a little bit better, and I really like the actor who plays him. And I like the final fight between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Dooku. I like Palpatine always. So Palpatine was never bad in this movie, and I like the scene of him getting the emergency powers and being like, I love democracy. And there's gems to find, but there's a lot more shit to crawl through than Phantom Menace. So overall, when everything is said and done, this is the lowest I will give a Star Wars movie during our series. And I hope this is the lowest I'll ever have to give a Star Wars movie, because there's still 2 more coming. This movie gets a 3.5.
All right. Dennis, how about you?
Oh yeah, I just think this movie is an improvement from the first. Like, I would give the first one like maybe a 3.5 or a 4 out of 10. This one, just like the path it's going down, we get to see Anakin and Obi-Wan in that relationship a lot. That's what I can see in the first one a lot too. And the Natalie Portman thing, her and Anakin, it's not great, but I kind of want to give it like a passing grade for like an E for effort almost, because I sort of wanted to see something between them. Some of the fights aren't great. Some of them are pretty cool, like in the end with Count Dooku. And I actually did like seeing Yoda get a little bit of action in there. That kind of got me a little excited. But overall, like, this movie isn't. It's fine. I would say, like, yeah, I think you guys talk. I was gonna give this a 6 out of 10. I might go like a 5.5 out of 10 now. There are a lot of stupid things going on here, but I think this is the direction I wanted to see the movie go into.
Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be the lowest rating I've ever given to anything. I think this movie is just an abject disaster. There's like 2 scenes that I think are passable, and I think that it's just bad. I gave Phantom Menace a 3.5 because I thought that there were some hints of good things, but overall the structure was just a mess, and it was solidly below average. I think that this is worse than that, so I have to go even lower. I'm going to give this a 1.9 out of 10. I think this is even below a 2. I really think that this movie is a mess. I mean, if you've heard I've said, I have very few good things to say. There's maybe 1 or 2 scenes that I think are decent, and there's no scene in this movie that's even a candle to Duel of Fates. And as great as Duel of Fates is, it's not like Phantom Menace was this amazing movie. Like, if you can't even come close to the best scene from a mediocre movie, then that's not good. And I don't relish being upset, but this movie is a mess, and I'm not going to give it points for anything else. If Cory can say like, oh, you watch Clone Wars and you see some of these characters aren't that bad, and things are a little bit better. But for me, Clone Wars just absolutely ruined this movie, because it made me go from, wow, that was bad, but like, maybe it just had to be bad. Maybe there was no way to tell this type of story well. And I'm like, oh no, there was. Clone Wars is the way to go. This movie is it's just not even close. It's a mess. So I'm going to stand by that rating. So, thank you guys for tuning in to Cory is Wrong About the Prequels. Even though our name says the Crossroads Inn, but I haven't had time to make a new overlay. So thank you for Cory being on. Thank you for Dennis for hopping on halfway through. We appreciate you joining in.
No problem. I'll come on any time. I'll be a little more prepared.
Yes. And check back next week. We'll be talking about Clone Wars, so you can finally hear us say things about what Cory and I kind of mentioned a lot. I have to go finish Clone Wars, though, so I should go do that. So without further ado, we will see you guys soon.